The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sanctions Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sackheads. Sackheads. Radio. Sackheads. Sackheads. Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Hey, it's the 30th of July, 2014. You listen to the Sackheads Radio Show. Thank you so much to our good friend, the exceptional one, Ken McClinton, for throwing it over. We were killing ourselves laughing. The coolest part about following Ken here on SHR Media is two things to me. One, he's always got groove and play-out music, so it kind of gets us in that mood. We're kind of a little jiving.
Right, you always tear like the top part of your shirt and open it up and let that chest hair like fly. You know what I mean? Just kind of let it hang out with like some gold chains on with that kind of funky music he's got going on. It does it to you every week.
So it kind of gets us going. Soccer's dancing. And then for Ken to stop his groovy play-out music to give us a shout-out like that.
Well, yeah.
Is immense. I mean, that just shows you how awesome of a guy he is. He's not just a great host, which he is.
He's a great host.
A great friend of ours who we love dearly. But he's just all around badass.
He is. Well, that, and I think he likes us so much. We love him for a billion reasons, but I think he only likes us for one, and I'm okay with that. But I think he likes us because, he is. Well, yeah, he is so serious and very intelligent on his show, and then he comes on our show,
and it's just playtime.
It's complete playtime. He can say whatever he wants and do whatever he wants, and so I think it gives his other personalities a chance to come out. I think he stops taking medication. And I don't know if he takes medication for bipolar disorder. I don't know if you've seen the movie, like Me, Myself, and Irene. I think I envision it kind of like that. But with Ken.
Man. Hello to everybody who's joining us in the chat room today on shrmedia.com. We appreciate you guys being here. If you're not in the chat and you're listening, just go ahead to SHR Media and click chat to join in the fun. A couple people in there already. Love to start a show nice like that.
What's Meteor?
Mediar. Why?
Right. Just making sure that...
It's more like Metoer.
Meteor.
Meteor.
But different.
But a little bit different. Ton to talk about this evening.
Like, name one thing.
Let's see. I'm going to start.
Look at the board.
I'm looking at the board.
What are you taking?
Pre-production board. I'm looking.
Yes.
Learner emails. DC Gunberry ban.
Whoa! I said one, right? This is kind of like Jeopardy. I'll take learner emails that show hate for Republicans.
And the answer is
yes.
This vile woman sent an email to her friends talking about how disgusting the Republicans are.
Right. Yes.
Yes. Good
Thank
answer. 200 to the next player.
Look, we have a lot.
I don't know why anyone thinks Trebek's a big deal. I just did it.
I know, and you nailed it, I got to say. And I just totally answered a question, so we could be Jeopardy champions.
Just so you know, Ken's wife is in total agreement with us. I think he means about the multiple personalities.
Okay.
Apparently, she found that comment quite amusing. So, Mrs. Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're all glad. I'm glad we see. I'm glad we see the same things that Ken.
So, do we call her Mrs.?
I'm glad we're not jaded by his beauty. Is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
We see him for the magic that he is.
Right. Or
we call her Mrs. Ken.
Mrs. Ken.
Yes.
I didn't know if we call her Mrs. Exceptional.
I stick with Mrs.
Do we call her more exceptional? Because I'm guessing that's the case.
Yeah, that might be a good one.
Right?
Mrs. More Exceptional.
Yes.
From now on, she shall forever be known on our show as Mrs. More Exceptional.
Motion passed.
Kelly in the chat room, Kel Fritz is pointing out that Alex Trebek is Canadian. I didn't say he was a bad person. I just said that I can do it better than him.
Yeah, why are you calling Alex Trebek a bad person? I mean, there's no need to call names. I mean...
I didn't say anything about a toque or a boot
right.
or anything like that.
Right.
Nothing about America's hat. I didn't even go down that road.
Right. For example, Sacco is Canadian. Okay? So he's Canadian. But there's no reason. There's no reason. Well, because doesn't Canadian mean bad person?
No.
Oh, it just means sissy.
What?
That's not Canadian, Sacco.
Oh no, because up next you were going to talk
up
about
next.
Russia.
We're going to talk about Obama. So it's close.
Oh,
we have
man.
the D.C. gun carry.
We do have the D.C. gun
ban
carry.
ruling. House votes to sue Obama.
Some news out of China that hasn't really been around too much. It's been a couple places, but and China has a Muslim problem, and we're going to discuss that tonight. But first, let's get to the important stuff. Before we were going on the air, we were having a little brief discussion, and Sacco said, because Sacco's without a mic this evening, and Sacco said, I don't have a mic. And you brought up a valid point about...
I did. I brought up, well, because I said something to him, like I usually do.
Right.
Like back in the case. I said something.
A magical point about the Second Amendment and how when you ban somebody from having it, it doesn't ban other people from having it, and then you can be victimized by the people that have it.
So we have to give some context here. So here's what happened. We took Sacco's mic away because he's still on timeout.
He is still on timeout.
Yes. So all he can do is play Volga Boatman. So we took his mic away because we agreed to let him out of the cage just to kind of see how things go for this show. And I made some comment.
So far, not good.
So far, not good. I made some comment, and he said, really, I don't even have a mic to defend myself. And I said, this is why 2A rights are important, because somebody that has a mic, like me, could do whatever he wants to somebody on the air that doesn't have a mic.
Right.
Like you. And so, similar to gun violence, and you actually called it mic-on-mic violence.
I did call it mic-on-mic violence.
I think that was a movie. Not an appropriate one, so we don't need to get into details. But
horrible. Horrible.
It brought up a good point.
Right. This is kind of breaking news. Agrador in the chat room just linked this to us. And there's not a lot into it. Like I said, it's just coming out now. But this is via The Onion, which is America's finest news source.
The Onion, absolutely.
Soccer finally announces that it's gay.
Okay.
Plagued for years by swirling rumors about his sexuality, Soccer has finally come out of the closet. We welcome you out. Thank you, Soccer.
Absolutely. Are you saying Sacco?
Soccer.
Oh.
Soccer.
Because the other one didn't surprise me either. That's horse racing, Sacco.
I think it's great that the Armenian guy has no idea what soccer is. That's even.
I know. That's the best.
I love The Onion. It is so great.
Well, they nail it.
They do. There was a great headline on The Onion this week from the NFL Robert Goodall saying that any player that kills his wife is automatically going to be get a 4-game suspension. And I love how it'll go around, and people that don't realize, like if you look at Facebook and Twitter, they'll retweet or reshare that story like it's 100% real. When the Goodall thing went out, there was an uproar on Twitter and Facebook. People were upset. Like, how could the NFL do that? That should be an immediate suspension, lifetime suspension, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it's The Onion. How can you... Do you really think, as stupid as the NFL is on some things, do you really think that they're going to come out and say that any player that murders his wife is only suspended for 4 games?
So now I have a question, and you may know, I don't know the answer to this legitimately. Is The Onion and the Chive connected?
No, not at all. Which is kind of funny, but no.
Because, you can kind of see.
Right.
Right.
So, how was your week? Awesome, Sacco, yours?
Yeah. We don't care, Sacco. You don't have a mic.
You're
wearing a Green Lantern shirt. Hey, have you seen what DC, I think it was a little while ago, they did to the character Green Lantern, DC Comics? I think they made the character come out of the closet. We were talking about Sacco coming out of the closet earlier,
Sacco
right?
has tonight is sound effects.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I have.
Okay. And Marvel announced the new Captain America is going to be black.
Right.
Which actually makes sense because Steve Rogers is going to lose his power or whatever, but then his sidekick, the character, I don't know the name of that character, is black, and so he's going to step in and take his friend's place.
Right.
So that one made sense. But like DC Comics doesn't make sense to me. Why are you going to have Green Lantern gay and Superman renounce his U.S. citizenship?
Yeah, well, they're just trying to they're just trying to win.
What do you think
everybody.
DC stands for?
I used to know, believe it or not.
I do believe. Is it dumb?
No.
C.
No, it's not that.
Okay.
C is definitely comics.
Oh.
Oh, Ken wants to straighten you out that it will be the Falcon that is going to be the new Captain America.
No, he didn't. He straightened me out. I just didn't know the guy's name.
And that's it. He's straightening you out and teaching
okay.
you.
So the Falcon.
Any comment about that would be considered racist, even if it's positive.
It was a positive comment. Like I can, it'd be like if something happened to Batman and Robin stepped in and became Batman.
Right.
Right.
Right. Totally
What is racist about that?
Totally racist.
Yeah, completely racist. You know what would be racist
what?
is if Robin was Native American because he wore red.
Oh, it could be Detective
Comics.
Good job. So
I don't know. Did you just Google that?
Oh, okay.
Why are you using Google? You know that they're trying to suppress 2A rights, right? I thought we had a ban from Google on this show or for our company here.
We didn't put that to motion.
Oh.
The simple fact is we're already being watched. So what difference does it make?
Right, exactly.
We might as well just use it. Oh man. So let's. Ooh, somebody says the new Mrs. Marvel might be a Muslim. She's a Marvel comic character. That'll be interesting. How do we always? Last week it was Jedi. We went off on a whole Star Wars rant,
right.
Which might have been one of our funniest rants that we've ever done on the show from a friend who I just quoted there.
Really?
So if you haven't listened to last week's show, it's the last 30 minutes or so, I think, right around the bottom of the hour, right around 9:20. So maybe an hour and 20 minutes in. And we're talking about Star Wars. You have to listen to it from the beginning because I listened to it a couple days ago and I had tears in my eyes, and I was part of the original conversation.
See, I got feedback that last week's gaffe and subsequent discussion ended up getting was one of the
that
best
was not
things
one of my
we've
brightest
done.
moments. I'll be the first to
I
admit.
disagree. I think that was turned around beautifully.
And then this week we get right into superheroes somehow. So moving right along.
If you could date any superhero, who would it be?
Me? Power Girl.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't even have to think about that one.
More so than Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Socko just voted She-Hulk. He doesn't have a mic. Maybe he said the Hulk.
Man.
I think you said the Hulk.
Hey, in the chat room, let's see what answers we'll get. That's a good question for the chat room. If you could date
Yeah.
any superhero, which one would it be? So Lois Lerner had some more. There was some more emails that came out. It's funny how somebody's hard drive that was completely destroyed, but yet they keep.
You mean
finding
scratched?
emails. Scratched.
Yeah, it was scratched.
Destroyed, scratched. Have you ever have you ever bought a brand new car and the first time a shopping carriage bumped into it, you just light it on fire and walk away?
Hang on. First of all, you said shopping carriage.
Yeah. What?
Nothing. Wow.
What?
Oh, nothing. Shopping carriage? What are we in 1862?
Where I come from, we call them shopping carriages. So yeah, 1862. But
I had no idea. No, please proceed.
So more emails came out, and she absolutely, from the quote-unquote destroyed hard drive, and how there'd never be any
Did this
evidence
come from the
whatsoever.
destroyed hard drive? I didn't see that.
I don't know if it came from the destroyed hard drive, but they're finding more emails.
Right.
So that means any email could be fair game still.
Mm-hmm.
And she essentially was emailing personal friends through the federal email system and discussing essentially that Republicans were the lower than pond scum.
What she
used
said, she
really
called them
hateful language.
She called them, quote, assholes and crazies.
Yeah.
And Jason, I was quoting so I can say it. That broad called Republicans assholes and crazies. Quote. End quote.
Go on.
Well, she's talking about how America used the term, quote, going down the tubes. They talk about her and this other person. They talk about, they call them like wackos, the wacko wing of the GOP. Essentially say the U.S. is through. Quote, too many foreigners sucking the teat. Time to hunker down, buy ammo and food, and prepare for the end. Right-wing radio shows are scary to listen to. And usually the truth scares people, so I would take that as a compliment.
The truth who are trying to ignore it, yes.
Right, I would take that as a compliment. That they said the right-wing radio shows are scary to listen to.
I have friends who like us that say we're scary.
Right, because we're right a lot of times. And then Lerner types back, quote, great, maybe we're through if there are that many a-holes, assholes, essentially.
So here's the person who now... You know, you back this up and you add this to the totality of it all.
Yes.
And you start looking at the fact that, you know, the accusation that she targeted and directed targeting of conservative groups.
Allegedly.
And then you throw in all the mystery behind the hard drive and the emails and the fact that they weren't releasing certain emails and all of a sudden the hard drive was destroyed. And then you heard, oh, it was only maybe scratched a little bit. And then this email pops out where she is personally, you know, and part of me wonders too, and you always have to be suspect, if this email was found a hard copy somewhere or if it was found electronically. If it's hard copy, I almost wonder if it's not conveniently found. In other words, somebody wants her to be the person that hates the right and almost a redirect. And I know it's a stretch, but if it's a hard copy, it's really hard to prove where that came from.
I don't know, and if they have the emails and the string, I don't know that it's necessarily hard copies because I don't think she would print all this out.
No,
so they would have to print. They would have to print them out
have.
from another source.
Source, but if they can find
from
that one, then why
source.
can't they find anything?
A soy carriage.
But if they can find that email, then everything else should be able to be obtained.
Well, not on a scratched hard drive, Sean. have we not we just went through this?
Is it like DJ scratching on the hard drive?
That's what I'm wondering.
Okay.
So she then goes on and makes a comment about like the class system, and she talks about a particular place she was where there were large homes which have been ruined essentially by letting the common people live there.
Oh, those damn commoners!
I know, and she says, "quote These people have ruined everything with their equality push." Now, think about that coming from a liberal.
Because
these people have ruined everything with their equality push. So, she's a liberal.
Well, but she's also, I bet you she considers herself part of the controlling class.
There's no doubt. But there's still that push, there's still that underlying, that theme of equality for all, except for the ruling class, right?
Exactly. And
but her comment of the equality push is what got me. Because that is just so. What is it that liberals push for, or what is it they use under the guise? And obviously, we know it's a bunch of crap. But what is it they use as their guise for doing things? It's about equality, right? It's about spreading things around. You didn't build that. Why do you need that much money?
Right.
You don't need that. You don't need that much energy. You don't need that much. You don't need that big of a car.
You don't need that big of a nose. I mean, they're really just kind of jerks about everything.
You don't need that big of a gut. I mean, you just right. I'm breathing too much oxygen, obviously.
Absolutely. You know, it just goes to show you, though, and we've talked about this for years, the hypocrisy.
Right.
And now that it's in writing, and you know immediately everyone's going to say, well, no, she's not. I mean, she's not really a liberal. She just hated everybody. Like, they're going to try to spin this in a way that is so ridiculous, but the proof is in the pudding. It's a fact being told.
And it's a figgy pudding.
It is now bring us some figgy pudding. How is it I end up singing every week at least one line of a show on something?
Because I set it up and you just knock it down. I mean, really, that's how it works. So this is important because this shows that she has a predisposed ideology or a predisposed hate, prejudice,
motive
for the group that she is accused directly of targeting. Now, it wasn't in there. It didn't say, "Hey, we're gonna we're going to target them specific. I mean, there wasn't that smoking gun, but I think this is important in the fact that it lays a foundation for to show her state of mind. It also, I mean, it clearly shows that she is capable of having that type of,
Without a doubt.
Right. Now, look, we disagree with liberals and progressives. We disagree with them. But we welcome all ideologies, and we enjoy having that discussion and that debate.
Right. We definitely enjoy the debate.
Yeah, we think they're dead wrong on a lot of issues, and there are some things we agree with them on, right? Particularly a few social things, but we think they're dead wrong on a lot of the things, particularly the policies that they have in place.
Absolutely. And you know, I've said it before, you've said it before, we just kind of said it again. I don't have a problem with people who want to have a conversation and an intelligent debate.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Ever. I could wholeheartedly disagree with you, but if you want to have an intelligent debate, I can sit down and appreciate that. If you have an intelligent point of view, I may not agree with it, but you have reason for what you say versus just spewing out whatever falls out of your hole when you open it.
Right.
Totally different. And you know, that's part of the reason that discourse is what was intentionally put in by the founders into our system.
Now, look, we've said liberals and progressives are ruining this country. We've made comments like that, but here's the difference. We've never targeted them for anything.
No.
We don't advocate them being targeted
at all
by anything.
As a matter of fact, we stand against it.
No, absolutely.
Because of the freedoms that we have in this country.
Absolutely.
And we are not the hypocrites that would say, oh, you know what, they shouldn't have the right to say that. But
exactly.
They should have the right to say that.
Right.
Even if it's stupid.
Well, they do have the right to say that. No, you're exactly. Whether we disagree with it, whether it's stupid.
But that's how problems get solved in this country, believe it or not.
But the problem is she is in a position of power.
Yes.
And she wielded that power, allegedly.
Allegedly.
She allegedly wielded that power, and this certainly shows that she had that predisposed mindset to do just that. There's not that. And then this whole, with their equality push. Look, we say we disagree with them. We, like you just said, right? We believe they should have the same things that we do. Everybody should. We wouldn't target somebody based on an ideology or something of that nature. And particularly for the IRS, and I'm curious to see where this goes, but I just thought that was interesting that came out. We're about 3 minutes behind schedule. Next story we have is a federal judge. Yeah, federal judge just ruled that the District of Columbia's ban on carrying firearms within the city, so carrying them, was unconstitutional. And the District of Columbia had a total ban on residents being able to carry concealed guns outside their home. There was a judge, Judge Scullin Jr., Frederick Scullin Jr. The case was Palmer v. District of Columbia. And the judge essentially said that, hey, the right to bear arms extends outside of the home. And the gun control laws that the District of Columbia had in effect were therefore unconstitutional. You can get the decision online, several places for it. But he essentially referenced, in his opinion, if you have a chance to read it, he referenced the District of Columbia v. Heller, the 2008 case, and the Chicago case, McDonald v. Chicago in 2010.
And he also, I believe, was there some mention of the San Diego case as well? And I can't remember off the top of my head, and I apologize.
I don't remember reading that. There may have been, but I don't remember reading that. That was a Ninth Circuit panel decision,
right?
So from a 3-judge panel from the Ninth. But he essentially says, hey, listen, in keeping with these Supreme Court rulings, you cannot ban people, and understanding what the Second Amendment was for, and as outlined in these rulings, you cannot basically prohibit, just give a blanket prohibition on people carrying firearms and not issuing permits. So he urged the mayor there, Vincent Gray, and the city council to, quote, swiftly enact a concealed carry law that protects the rights of law-abiding citizens to protect themselves.
You mean abide by the Constitution, essentially?
Right.
I mean, As silly as it sounds, it frustrates me. And I'm glad he made this decision. But
Yep.
it frustrates me that decision had to be made. It frustrates me that had to go to court. It's one of our most basic rights in this country.
It is. Number 2.
There's a reason it's up there.
Number 2. So here's what the city said. Quote, basically that it must be more heavily restricted than any place else in the nation.
Why?
Because of the nation's, the national security concerns there.
Oh, so that automatically trumps our constitutional rights?
Apparently in his mind, yes. I just report, folks.
Well, and I hate to say it, but doesn't the judge wield more power in the sense of him saying what the law is and ruling on that? It doesn't matter what his opinion is. It matters what the judge says. And if the judge says...
It matters what the Constitution says.
Well, right.
So let's have
in this particular matter, it matters what the judge says
it does.
because he's interpreting the Constitution.
He is. So I have to ask this question. I want to have this discussion.
Okay.
I kind of want to have this discussion, but I'm
Okay.
a little afraid of where it might lead. So our rights are ours because they're given to us from nature, right? Whether you believe in, whether it's nature, whether it's God, just because we live, we have certain rights.
I had this discussion
Correct?
today with the liberal,
Okay.
yes.
So if we have a right to
Who
defend
agreed, by the way.
Okay, good. If we have a right to defend ourselves and we have a right to life, liberty, and property or the pursuit of happiness, and part of that is self-defense and being able to cast off a government when it becomes too oppressive, and all the things that are talked about in our founding, in our organic documents. If there was a judge who ruled, let's say a Supreme Court, who ruled that something was unconstitutional or ruled that something was illegal when it's blatant violation. For example, if a judge, batshit crazy, came out and just said, you know what, you cannot say whatever you want. You have to say only what the government says you can say. You can't say any of these things. And not only that, but media, you have to get approval before you run any story from your local government office. Let's say that ruling came out.
Okay.
Okay, let's think 5 years ahead. And that wouldn't mean that we still wouldn't have that right.
Right.
We would still have that right. Right?
Yes.
So then do we have a duty to disobey?
I would say yes.
So what happens if a Supreme Court at some point down the line ever said, you know what, no, you cannot bear arms. The Second Amendment does not apply to the individual. It applies to the collective and everybody turn in their guns.
Yeah.
NSA, hang on, are you listening?
I would say no.
You would say no, you have to obey?
No, I'm sorry. I would say no. I would not comply. I would absolutely say that I would have to stick with the Constitution.
So who do you appeal that to? See, and here's the sticky situation, because if a U.S. Supreme Court ruled on it and you had a Congress who failed to act on it or a president who wouldn't sign a new law to overturn that blatantly bad decision, whether it's First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, whatever it is, how do you fight that? And this may sound ridiculous, but this discussion, this week there was just a big discussion about limiting First Amendment rights. And legislation. Look, there is an amendment that not 20 years ago would have been laughed off the floor, being brought up, and I think it's in the Senate. Ken might correct me in the chat room if I'm wrong. I don't have the information right in front of me, but I think it was in the Senate where they actually want to limit First Amendment rights and speech and what the media can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring it up as kind of an absurd
because
point, but it's not really absurd. What if we get there? And these are things, hey, Lois Lerner, this is one of those scary things we're talking about here, but it's because you chowderheads in Washington do some ridiculous things. But if they're talking about this now, and it's not going to pass right now, because if it did pass, their states would still have to ratify it, and I just don't see it happening. But there are, and I forget how many, like 13 state legislatures that have already said, yeah, we'd support this.
Yeah.
So they're already starting to be in power. So even though it's not going to happen now, look, we could see this in our lifetime.
Well, and you look at what the FCC tried to do a couple months ago.
Yes.
That slid under the radar.
Yes.
And it wasn't until, and it was a while after it was thrown around the FCC, it was kept quiet, putting monitors essentially inside newsrooms. And now you look at that getting thrown to the floor, states saying that they would sponsor it. This is our most basic and important right. I know there's some that argue, say, Second Amendment protects the first, Second Amendment's most important. But if you don't have the speech to create the controversy that you may need the Second Amendment to protect, you have nothing. The first is the catalyst to the rest, in my humble opinion. And the first is what allows us to be who we are. Again, our Democrat friends, I may not like what you have to say, but I absolutely would defend to the death your right to say it.
Right.
And if we lose that First Amendment, if we lose any part of it, because once, and we've talked about this before, once you go into the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and you start nicking away at certain parts of one thing, the rest is right behind it. Because once you broach that, once you cross that line, there's no going back.
So the Senate Judiciary Committee is the one who backed this, and it's SJ Resolution 19, and it's now going to go to the full Senate to a vote. And you can read it, and it sounds really good, right? It's talking about advancing the fundamental principles of political equality for all, to protect the integrity of the legislative and electoral process. And it sounds like it's talking about regulating the raising and spending of money. But then it says, and in-kind equivalence, which is, look, that's us, right? If we're talking about a candidate or giving an interview, or that's an in-kind equivalent that they want to regulate. This is something that's so ridiculous that the ACLU actually sent a letter opposing it.
What?
I know. Saying that it would severely limit the First Amendment rights. One of the few times that I actually agree with the ACLU's assessment of this.
I think I flipped one of them off a couple days
ago.
But
if this were to pass, this would be the first time ever, with the exception of Prohibition, which failed,
right,
that a constitutional amendment has ever been passed that would limit rights.
I think that's a great example, though. You look at what happened with Prohibition. And I know we're up against a break, and I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sorry.
You're pretty sorry?
I'm pretty sorry.
I'm very sorry.
But Prohibition was a prime example of a fundamental right. And as much as people may not like drinking,
I like drinking.
The government can't control what I put in my body to that point.
You like drinking.
I love drinking. Can you imagine me? To answer your question, Prohibition passes right now. Where do you think I'm going to stand on that side? You know me. Everyone who listens to the show knows me.
You'd toast Prohibition with a shot of whiskey.
Absolutely would. Sean Speakeasy. Right. I would absolutely.
And you do speak easy, my friend, which is why you're such a smooth radio show host. Folks, we're up against a break. When we come back, we're going to get into the House voting to impeach sue Obama.
Here.
Speak easy. You do speak easy.
I do speak.
You've kind of got that smooth voice that goes down easy.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Here's radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Fact news. Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Are we good now, Sacco? You take 2 weeks off, dude.
Are we
You're
okay?
a bloody mess.
2 weeks off, and then you want an extended break, too.
Right. And no. You don't get to Volga Boatman us about this. No. There's no talking back. Dude,
Technically,
we let you out of the cage.
Technically, he's not talking back.
You don't get to Volga back.
There's no sounding back.
No! Stop it! We're back here at the Sackheads Radio Show.
Why do we even have the start of a horse race trumpet on the soundboard?
Oh no!
Or is that the?
That's the Bugs Bunny one.
Oh, that's no. The Obama and Jay Carney.
Right. So
rise.
So the House voted this week.
Today.
Well, today. That's this week.
It is this week.
To sue the president.
To allow
Boner. First of all, why we allow Boner to do anything is beyond me. But
that's what your wife asked.
What?
Wait. I'm sorry. What?
What?
So was my internal dialogue off again?
Yes.
I apologize.
It's one of those things to me that while this is all well and good, and it's Boehner's way of making himself look tough on the president, I don't agree.
Boner's got to show that he has a stiff back on this one.
Right. He's really going to show that he's standing up tall.
Right.
And I understand that. However,
he's really got to puff himself up.
This comes after earlier today, Nancy Pelosi dared Boehner to take impeachment off the table as a result of this whole vote.
Take it off the table?
Yes.
Why would she be afraid of that?
Well, because I know it's weird, right? It's almost like distraction, I think. Essentially, listen, the Republicans are making a horrible idea on this, belief out of this. I think this is a terrible idea because this starts to take us away from impeachment, and the rhinos and the centrists are going to turn around and the Democrats and say, wait, you already sued him. Now you're going to impeach him too?
Yes.
Yeah, but they're going to use that as okay, that's your give, and we're still going to take. And I think it's stupid. I think if we have the grounds for impeachment, then you impeach.
So
the
question becomes, if you have enough to file a lawsuit because the president exceeded his authority,
yes,
is the mere fact that he exceeded his authority grounds for impeachment? And that, I think, is the fundamental question. Because if the answer is yes, then constitutionally, the House has the power, the authority, to file articles of impeachment, and I believe they need to do their constitutional duty and do that. And take care of business, if that's what it is. Listen, I understand that it's unpopular. There's 30-some-odd% of the people that think that Obama should be impeached. They don't want to piss people off, which makes it political. But the fact is, if they believe that there is something there,
then they need to go with it.
Then the constitutional authority for them to do something is impeachment.
And
that's the process.
By not doing it, in my opinion, they're almost doing the exact same thing that they're accusing him of in the manner of not living up to his oath.
Right.
Because it is their duty if he is overstepping his bounds. It is their duty as a level of Congress, government that is his balance to the check, if you will, to check him.
Absolutely. And if the Senate doesn't convict, then they don't convict. You put your case on. If you don't get a conviction, you don't get a conviction. But you did your duty. You sent the message, right? He's been impeached. Maybe you don't get a conviction. But if that's what you feel it is, it's not for you to run to the judicial branch now.
And pawn it off on them.
And pawn it off on them. And try
that's
and
all
make,
that is.
Right.
And what does that say to America? All your problems get solved through a lawsuit.
Through the courts.
Yep.
Yep. All the problems
Sue,
get solved through
sue.
So let's talk about it. What is a high crime and a misdemeanor? Is it dereliction of duty? Is it the fact that you overstep your authority? It's not like he's overstepped his authority once or twice, 3 times in Obama, right? See, I can't leave you to be the only one who sings on this show. But this is something that has been an ongoing issue with him, to where you've had X number of Supreme Court rulings that have essentially said he's overstepped his authority numerous times.
You have evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's not a lot of argument. There's, well, you won't do it, so we had to do something, is what you get. But it's essentially if you abuse the public trust somehow, that's what it is. Alexander Hamilton talked about what an impeachable offense was. And Alexander Hamilton talked about the offenses are those, quote, which proceed from the misconduct of public men, or in other words, from the abuse or violation of some public trust. They're political offenses, is what they are. So, do you have that? And I think that the House believes they have that, which is why they're talking about this lawsuit, Boner in particular.
Right. But it shows you that he is not standing up tall. As a matter of fact, he's a little flaccid on this situation because he's afraid to pull the trigger and go right to impeachment.
Absolutely.
So he's going to take the coward's way out.
But I think he's afraid to do so for political reasons.
Exactly.
And this is where we
atrocious.
And this is where we don't have courage. You know, look, the left is going to say, "Oh, well, they're looking at the extreme right is calling for impeachment." No. What I'm calling for is, if you believe you have some actionable offense or offenses, then take the appropriate action, the constitutional action, which would be impeachment.
Absolutely.
If you don't believe you have that, which is why you're not going to impeach and you're just going to take him to court instead,
do nothing.
Well, then don't do it.
Do nothing.
Do nothing. Why are you going to take it to court?
Just sit there and keep whining and being orange like you already do.
Yes.
And cry a few more times, why don't you? You know, and
that's our only point. I just want our listeners to be clear. Do I personally believe that there is enough to impeach Obama? I do. I believe there is enough there to impeach him. But to our elected leaders, those representing me, I'll speak to you, what I want you to do is not to bring a lawsuit. If you believe, like I do, that there have been actionable offenses, that there has been a breach of that public trust, then do what your constitutional duty is and impeach him.
Absolutely.
If not, then don't.
A couple comments in the chat by Ag. Go at him like they went on Nixon is, what did he know and when did he know it? That's a big one they need to go at him on everything. And he also thinks that Boner might be afraid of premature consequences, which I agree. He can't get too excited about a political payoff too early. It does happen.
It does happen, not very often, but I find that as he gets older, he's more worried about those premature consequences, or maybe not performing at all. I mean, he seems to have difficulty sometimes standing up and getting the job done.
Yeah,
does he not?
I believe so. He can't rise to the challenge.
Right, and is that an age thing? Do you think he's just been there too long?
It could very well be. Maybe he's right. I mean, he's just not excited by the government anymore and being in government, so he's just kind of, he might as well just be flipping channels on the TV and making excuses.
Look, if he's got headaches or he's down or whatever, there's pills you can take for that, right? Those 5-hour energy things and whatnot to kind of get some energy to do that.
Get ready to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's too tired. Maybe he's just too old and tired. Maybe government is just, the mistress he's bored with. So
Nice.
there's a couple different ways that you can look at this. Kel in the chat room says, forget impeachment, arrest him for war crimes. I believe she's talking about drones in certain countries that we don't necessarily have the legal authority to be in firing drones.
And if that's the case, then again, I would say impeachment, right?
Yeah.
Due process. I think that's another case that could be made potentially.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't. I personally would have, unless there was
it's
something
egregious,
right.
over the top.
I would,
because
I wouldn't want somebody coming and arresting a Republican president because they thought.
Pardon me.
Whatever, but that's is that an impeachable offense?
You could find out through the course of impeachment that maybe something was so atrocious and such an egregious violation of law that there would be an arrestable offense, and that would stem from the investigation on impeachment.
And look, let's talk about this for a moment. If there is an impeachable offense, or if Obama was impeached, you'd have Biden take over, right? If he was convicted, but if you had the president impeached and you forced the Senate to vote on it, every single one of those members would be on record, and the nation would see the evidence that's presented. Right? Those hearings would be publicized all over. Well, probably not MSNBC or NBC.
Well, they would have their own
CNN
spin on it,
or
would have their
Al Jazeera
experts.
But Fox News would play all the clips, right? They'd play it in its entirety.
We would play a ton of the clips.
All I'm saying, the public would get the evidence, and it would put those senators on record for their votes. And look, if the public thought there was something there, and you had people voting not guilty or not to convict, they're on record now for that, and they have to defend that. Conversely, if you have people who believe that absolutely he did nothing wrong, and you had somebody vote to convict, and let's say the case wasn't made properly, and you had a straight conviction, which vote based on political pressures or whatnot, again, that would give the opponent something to put them on record, and I don't think that's a bad thing for either side. I really don't. I understand they're scared of it.
Egg in the chat says the evidence would most likely implicate Biden too. I think you might be giving Biden a little bit too much credit. I don't know how you can honestly put Biden in front of anybody and say that he remembered something that happened 15 minutes ago. I think he would get off on an insanity plea. I really do. He's like, I've been out of my goddamn mind for 25 years.
He wouldn't even say that. Biden
would see my Trans Am.
His attorney would stand up there and just point at him. And Biden would be like, "What? Why are you pointing at me? Am I a big fucking deal or what? Why are you pointing at me? Hey, anybody? Why is this guy pointing at? Who are you, Jack?
Who is
Wanna
that
go for a
guy?
ride?
Hey,
I got the T-tops off. Let's go."
You ever been to a 7-Eleven? Can't go in a 7-Eleven without seeing an Indian. Didn't he say something like that on a news camera? Joe, that's really not what we're talking about. Yeah, well, I'm just saying, though. You can't go into a 7-Eleven and have there not be an Indian guy. Where's Hillary? It's just... I would love to see him on the stand, as a matter of fact.
I would love to see him as run for president. I was going to say as president. Would that be a great 4 years for this show? Horrible for the country.
Right. We would absolutely be in a bomb shelter recording our show.
But for the show, it would be great.
Like, could we even do the show in Morse code? Maybe. We'd have to get like 2 different tones of Morse code.
No. Sacco would have to learn Morse code and decipher, come up with some app. Sacco, here's your project. I'm going to let you out of the cage. Develop an iPhone app that when you speak into it, it automatically converts it to Morse code.
That's a yes.
That's a yes. And give it 2 separate tones so that we could have a conversation with it. And create an algorithm to change that Morse code so the NSA couldn't understand what we were talking about, but we could give it to all our listeners. And so we can order Subway sandwiches.
Right. Eat fresh.
Right.
Now, not a sponsor of the show.
No, not at all. Pretty sure
I want to
Jared
go
loves
back
this
to
stuff.
Biden on the stand.
Okay.
Because,
in his penny
this
loafers.
is such a heavy... dude,
Does he put quarters in his penny loafers?
Of course he does.
Okay.
Because he can.
Right.
I just picture like...
It's like a folded dollar bill.
I just picture like tight Wrangler jeans,
No, he can't wear Wranglers. He's not cool enough for Wranglers.
No, all right. Like tight dad
Levi's.
jeans. Like
Give him a Levi's.
You ever seen like granddad jeans, that age group, 65, 70, where they wear the penny loafers, no socks?
Yeah, with the elastic in the back only.
Yeah, the jeans with the waist that goes somewhere between their nipples and their throat.
Right, right. Or just below the nipple line if you're a cool
Lacoste
grandfather.
golf shirt.
Okay.
The members-only jacket.
Uh-huh.
And his sunglasses.
And his Journey T-shirt.
His Journey. Don't stop.
Over, like on top of everything.
Now, you walk him into the courtroom.
Right.
He sit down. The first words out of his mouth is, they'll put the Bible in front of him, and he'll be like, I can't believe they brought one of those things into a strip club. And look at the judge and say, you the DJ? Are we going to get this music going or what? Because that young lady over there looks like she's really going to pull off the teacher thing. Yeah, I'm the lawyer. Whatever. Lawyer, that's fine. Let's do it.
Yeah, lawyer, schoolgirl lawyer, we can play this. What am I? What am I going to be? Am I going to be the bailiff? I'm going to be the cop today. Hey, kid, give me your handcuffs. Watch this. Right? Actually, that's the Senate.
Is there a way that we can do a television show
that's Harry Reid.
with Joe Biden on every TV judge show on the face of the planet? Just for different things. People, I'm not saying sue him erroneously, but for silly things. Or just a weekly show where we bring Joe to different places like a courtroom or a hospital and just sit him like in a public area and let him talk.
You know what we call it? Field Trips with Joe.
Field Trips with Joe. I love that. Tripping with Joe.
Tripping with Joe. We just hang out with Biden, take him different places, and let him talk to people. And film it.
Just the most inappropriate things coming out of his mouth. Let's see. I'll have a beer and whatever's in your shirt. You know, like, oh, breasts? Well, must be my lucky day. Call me Mr. Lucky.
Right. Hey, here's to nipples. Without those, titties would be pointless. Right. I mean, he'd say things like that.
And, Egg says that'd be Clinton, but I think you underestimate Joe.
I think so, too.
You look at some of the pictures in the election, whenever he's around a female, he just gets those eyes like he absolutely is in charge of the room. And I just think he's so goofy that nobody would ever dare accuse him. But I really think that, Biden, I think he's one of the biggest women chasers there.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Just for fun. And I don't think he...
just for fun. You're not saying he's a man whore, right?
No. I just think...
Like he doesn't cheat on his wife.
It's like the thrill of his hunt. He's almost like the guy that goes out in the field and stalks an animal for like 2 hours and then just walks away without shooting it.
Right. Getting within range.
Right. And there's like, I don't need to eat that. I'm just saying I could do it if
like
I wanted
literally,
to.
he would say, I don't need to eat that.
Right.
But we're talking
it
was like a double entendre. Right. No, I know guys like that, and so that actually makes perfect sense.
Yes,
right. I know a guy, Bob, who's like that.
Yeah. Oh man! But tripping with Joe, we're gonna have to pitch that to him when he gets impeached. Now that you're out, Joe,
he's not going to be impeached. They'd never convict him.
How can you convict the insane?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, he took a polygraph test. He actually does not remember. And as a matter of fact, the only memory he has starts before 1978.
Right, and now, congratulations, you've impeached Obama, he's removed, so President Biden is who we have now.
But all joking aside, I love when we go on our rants about this. All joking aside, you can't look at the number 2 and say, well, we're stuck with the number 1. You know what I mean? You can't look past...
Now, when you called him a number 2, was that some kind of backhanded comment?
No. I like Joe.
I know you
really
do.
I think he's a riot. I hate the fact that he's vice president, but I would love to go hang out with Joe.
Oh, so would I.
I think he'd be
I honestly believe he would just be like a good dude to hang out with. Have a beer.
Hate his politics.
Yeah, smoke a cigar, disagree with him politically. And I don't think he's as crazy left as Obama. I really don't.
I don't either. I think he was brought in as the moderate. That's why he's there.
Yeah, but I would absolutely, I would love to just hang out with him. And
Ag in the chat room says Joe Biden, the only human who can flatline a polygraph.
Do we still have Dare Joe Biden up?
Oh, we don't have. We haven't moved the Dare Joe Biden. We still have it on the old site. We have the files for it somewhere, but we haven't put it on the new site. I love Dare Joe Biden.
We need to resurrect that.
I dare Joe Biden to voluntarily impeach himself, just to see if he'd do it. Hey guys, you know what? Come get me. Oh, Joe, what did you do? Doesn't matter. Let's just do an impeachment thing. It sounds fun. It has the word peach in it, right? How can that go wrong?
Who doesn't love peaches? I love peaches.
Pie, peach cobbler. He could be like the Bubba Gump of peaches. Just go hours and hours and hours. Pardon me. But all joking aside, you can't look at Joe and say that's a reason not to impeach Obama.
Right.
If Obama has done these egregious acts, which I believe on some levels he has, I believe the evidence is there to go forward with the impeachment.
I do too. But this whole lawsuit thing is just like we talked about. Listen, if there's something there, you have a constitutional authority to do something. That's the course I think you should take. Because on one hand, and this is just my feeling on it, you may find something in the Constitution. Well, it doesn't say we have to impeach. We could go to the okay, fine. But what does the Constitution say? Impeachment is what your authority is specifically for high crimes and misdemeanors, and we already talked about what that was. If that's what we're talking about here, then that's what the Constitution gives you the authority to do. Go that route. But the Dems are using this as a like a fundraising thing.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, everything's fundraising now.
Everything's fun, but they're using it as a big-time fundraising thing. Well, they're out to impeach Obama. Well, okay. Well, then tell your guy to stop breaking the law.
Right. Stop giving us things to even think about impeaching him for.
Right.
You know, I am not a fan of impeaching somebody in lieu of a recall. You know, I don't think that we should be impeaching somebody just because we don't like everything that he does.
Exactly.
I don't like the fact that our president, doesn't matter which president, is in a situation where the impeachment's even being discussed, because it means that things have gone so horribly wrong.
Right. And
that now we're discussing charging him and removing him.
And I'm not even a big fan of impeaching somebody for look, let's say Obama issued an executive order changing the health care law and that was unlawful. Okay, I wouldn't say I wouldn't even be talking about impeachment in that case, right? Or recess appointments when they weren't really in recess. We're not even really talking about recess there. But when you have continued abuses and continued mocking and continued disdain for the limits placed on his authority, now we're talking about impeachment.
Absolutely.
Because this man has shown, the president has shown an utter contempt and an utter disregard for the Constitution and the rule of law. This isn't like somebody, look, we could probably give examples of several presidents who you could make a straight-faced argument on either side of the political aisle where they may have exceeded their authority. And while we disagree with it, right, like you can make a straight-faced argument that Bush exceeded his authority in certain cases, right? Or, well, Clinton gave false testimony, which is a different issue. And I'm just throwing that as an example. But I don't think presidents need to be impeached for everything like that. I want to be very, very clear with this.
And also, don't forget that the Democrats did try to impeach Bush.
They did.
So it's not like it's only a game that the right plays.
Right.
The left played it too, and I hate to say it's
and
a game.
I disagree.
It's not a game.
It's being used as a game.
Right.
Right.
That's the problem.
And that's a problem. But in this case, with this president, you have just such a abuse. I mean, when it comes to the Constitution, the man's been a scofflaw.
Whoa.
Did I just nail that?
Did you just drop that? Or what?
Well, yeah.
I mean,
remember you bet me last week I couldn't get it in on the show this week.
Man, I'm paying out. Go on.
So, look, that's my 2 cents on it. I think I understand kind of the spirit of what the House is doing. I think that they should be going about it other ways. The White House sent some kind of response out, I think it was via Twitter, to the effect of, hey, the House voted today, but it wasn't to do anything about immigration or do anything about
They're pushing it back on them.
Else. They're pushing it back on them. It was to file a lawsuit against the president. And you know what? I hate to say it, but it's kind of true.
It is very true. They did not vote on
it.
They
did not vote on any of those things.
So what they're saying is factually correct.
It is factually correct.
They did not vote on any of those things today. Okay.
So,
I'm glad they...
Yeah.
Thanks for the update there, White House Twitter feed.
Yeah. I agree with what you said. Thanks.
We are up against a break. It is so sad. You want to talk about, seriously, you want to talk about snake oil salesmen. The White House is the best at it. Oh, man. When we come back, we're going to talk about Gaza. We're going to talk about some stuff on the border. We have a couple of, I want to get into China.
You want to get into China?
No, I don't want to get into
Like
China.
you want to break in
when
there?
When we come
like...
back, I want to talk about China and their Muslim problem first, if we can do that.
Absolutely.
Back at 3 Sackheads Radio.
Fact news. Fact news. Fact news. Fact news.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Radio.
Fact news. Fact news. Fact news. Fact news. Fact news. Fact news.
Hey, we're back here on the Sackheads Radio Show. 800-545-5708 is the phone number. Pull that out without even having to read it. How am I doing right now? Nailing it. That's how I'm doing.
Yeah, you did. You pretty much nailed it.
I know we have a lot to talk about, but China this Monday, and this was one of those things that was China tried to suppress in their news because they run state media. So imagine if, the government had the right to squash First Amendment, how that happens. But dozens of knife-wielding thugs, presumed to be Muslim, I'm going to say this wrong, Uyghur separatists, conducted a
Just say Muslims.
Premeditated and carefully planned attack on government buildings and a police station in Alaxu, China, in the northwest Xinjiang province. Terrorists killed dozens of Han and Uyghur citizens, destroyed 31 vehicles, presumably because of their association with a local branch of the hated Beijing government. The police killed dozens of the attackers. All edged weapons, for the record, all knives. Because they don't have guns in China for the most part.
Well, that's good because that takes care of the violence.
The attack happened on Monday, but kept quiet by the Chinese authority, who issued the following censorship instructions to the media. Without exception, all media must refrain from reporting from reporting on the violent terror incident in Sash
Well, then
County,
we can't. Why are we reporting this?
Xinjiang.
Why are we reporting this?
Because
China's forbidden us from doing
right
this.
now. Well, I know. Imagine that if they're like, hey, yeah, you have to shut up because we own you.
Right.
Any news of the incident was scrubbed from the internet. Whoa, wait, you mean somebody that would have control over the internet and could shut it down? Weird. As soon as it was posted, however, news talk began to leak out to international media, and blah, 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 blah. Here we are. So this isn't the first attack with edged weapons in China. There was a month ago that was a coordinated attack, I believe also in the Xinjiang region of China. I don't know if they were Muslim extremists, but it appears that China's starting to have a problem with violent Muslims as well. They're also saying that some of the same group of Muslims from China are headed to Syria for jihad training. Wu Sik, China's special envoy for the Middle East, says China is extremely worried because jihadists from the Xinjiang province have gone to the Middle East for training and have joined the Islamic State of Iraq/Syria, the ISIS, in order to join the fight in Syria or Iraq. According to Wu, several hotspot issues in the Middle East have provided living space for terrorist groups. In particular, the crisis in Syria has turned the country into a training ground for extremists. Extremists come from Europe, North America, and China. China is a victim of extremist terrorist activities, and support for fighting terrorism in the region is beneficial to us as well. That report was brought to us by Breitbart with some Reuters information in there as well. So, we think of Muslim violence in the Middle East, and now it's starting to expand.
Is dinner ready?
Dinner's ready. And now it's starting to expand to the point that China's having a problem with it. And it really highlights, if you will, the problem with this extremism. And in China, which is a clamped-down country, I mean, listen, folks, we forget that China is still Red China. It is still a communist state in which they control large aspects of the people's lives. They control religion. They've forbidden the parts of these groups from fasting during Ramadan. They've forbidden them from exercising their freedom of religion, right, wrong, or indifferent, and that's what these guys are fighting for, allegedly.
Right.
So, we can learn a couple things about this here. Muslim extremism can happen anywhere. We know that in this country. They know that in the Middle East. The strands from ISIS and groups like that and Hamas, etc., can go well beyond the Middle East.
Yep.
When you limit somebody's free speech, freedom of religion, etc., you are essentially inviting an issue like this in your own country. Mm-hmm. Because whether or not you agree with Muslims' religion or not, in this country they have the freedom, which I think most Muslims who are peaceful are because they have their freedoms. Whether we don't like their religion, etc. And I really think, and I know a couple Muslim people who are completely against everything that's going on with Hamas. They're completely against any sort of ISIS situation. They are Americans, and they'll be the first to admit they believe in the Constitution, they believe in freedoms, and they would not do anything heinous because they believe their religion told them to do it.
It's the extreme wing of that religion, right? Listen, there have been violence in other religions. It's not like Muslim is the only religion that has had a history of violence, right? And you can go back to the Crusades, and you can go back to the Inquisition and whatnot, and there have been violent periods throughout history from other religions. There have. But here's the thing. The Muslim religion has had an extremist component to it for
years.
For centuries, literally. We've talked about this before on the show. The pirates of Tripoli were Muslim, and they were attacking us when we were colonies and when we were fighting for our independence, and we had to deal with them when we were a young country, where they were imprisoning, killing our sailors and imprisoning our people and enslaving our people. Mm-hmm. So, and it was because of that religion. And Thomas Jefferson And John Adams actually wrote a report about it when they met the Pasha, I believe, in London. So this is not a new issue. And again, it's not all Muslims. That's not what we're saying here at all. But if you have extremist factions of Muslims and they are creating terror, like it is now they're doing in China, this is a global problem. And I'm not one for global governance or global solutions or anything like that. However, this is one where every country is going to have to deal with it. And, China has a problem with edged weapon attacks.
Serious problem.
With these rampage killings, these rapid mass murder events. In the United States, we have them. When they happen here, hey, you know what? Sometimes they happen with guns, but we don't lead the world in rampage killings. And when they happen elsewhere, sometimes they happen in knives. Look, we're starting to see some knife attacks here in the U.S. with that, right? The kid in Pennsylvania, the Santa Barbara killing, the first 3 victims were with a knife.
Canada's starting to see both edged weapons and
so without
firearms.
getting too much into the gun debate here, listen, that's why we don't need to stop gun violence. We need to worry about violence. And in China, they have the strictest gun control laws, some of the strictest are around. And look what happens. You had a massive, rapid mass murder event, and the weapon of choice in this case was knives.
Right.
So it's not a weapon issue.
No.
It's a violence issue. And how do you deal with these terror organizations, these terror groups? And on a bigger question, how do you deal with those intent on committing mass violence? And that's really the question here. But what is China going to do with this terrorist situation? Look, they I'm sure they're going to act swiftly, and they should, right?
Absolutely, but I'm sure they're going to overlook that thing called due process. Listen,
that's their country, though, right? That's their system.
They're going to go and eradicate, and they're going to eradicate anything they think that looks like these extremists because that's just what they do. So, a good point by Egg is 9/11 started with box knives. So, again, another point of how a mass murder can happen with an edged weapon and not gun. Real quick on the gun response, even though we're not going on a 2A thing, there was the issue out of Philadelphia last week where the doctor stopped a rampage killing by having his CCW on him.
Yep, his concealed weapon.
His concealed weapon. So, I mean, we all know the evidence. Anyone who actually pays attention to the evidence knows it's not a gun problem. Like you said, it is a violence problem.
Yes.
And we don't deal with that in this country.
And
we try to make excuses for people that create violence.
But even the gun groups don't say it's a violence problem, right? They just say it's not the gun, it's the people. It's not the gun, it's the crazies. Well, call it what it is. It's a violence problem.
Yes.
It's not a...
It's a severe violence problem.
Right.
And
I still don't hear anybody ever using the whole thing of, well, we need to stop gun violence. Well, no, we need to concentrate on violence. I don't hear that argument.
No, I agree with you. And I think in our country, a lot of it has to do with the moral decay of our country. I think there's a lack of not just respect, but I think respect for life that happens in this country. I think that you have more people who just don't care if they take another person's life. And it's bizarre to me. I can't even say.
We should actually do a segment on that on the Mannerisms show.
Yeah, that would be an outstanding.
I'd be more than happy to come in and talk on that if you're interested.
I couldn't agree more. I think that the moral decay in this country is an atrocious thing. I do blame parents for a lot of, not for the violence itself, but for the lack of parenting when the child is young. Because if you find out a lot of people, it's the same MO. They don't necessarily, and I'm not saying it's a marriage or divorce thing. I'm saying it's the parents sometimes, and sometimes it's the influences allowed from the parents from the outside. And I don't necessarily. There's not one thing to put your finger on. It's an abundance of things.
There are a ton of factors, and there's a lot of information out there on that. And I would love to come on and talk about that.
So that's something that we have to watch. But you want to talk about extremism? It's growing everywhere. The Muslim extremism, it's starting to pop up more and more. And I think it's something that we in this country, we're so insulated. And 9/11 to some people might as well have happened 100 years ago. They don't even remember that it happened. And then when you have little incidents with 1, 2, 3, maybe like a Fort Hood type shooting, it's but that was just that one guy. And then as you go on, and I think I want to make sure that everyone's understanding the fact I wasn't apologizing for Muslim extremism at the beginning. I was just pointing out the fact that people have freedom of religion. But to say that Muslim extremism is not spreading outside of the Middle East.
There's a difference between saying freedom of religion and that you can believe what you want to believe, and saying freedom of religion, you can believe what you want to believe and practice what you want to practice in terms of extremism that affects the lives of other people.
Right.
Because your liberty ends when the liberty of others is infringed upon.
Right.
So
no matter what.
No matter what. So if you're practicing your religion and your religion is to, kill the great Satan, well, guess what? Your freedom to practice that religion here in this country ends once you infringe upon the life or the liberty of others. The great Satan or whoever it is that you're targeting.
The spaghetti head colanders. So, it's definitely something to watch, and especially out of China. The good part is it makes you wonder how much came out of China before that we didn't know because of the
Exactly.
internet.
That's what I was going to say. It makes you wonder how much happens over there that we don't know about because they do try and control everything and keep everything under wraps and out of the media.
But make no mistake about it, people, it's still red China. So, from one set of
terrorists to another.
Yeah, let's talk about
Gaza.
Hamas.
Let's talk about the Gaza update.
Yeah, this time I think it's 6 or 7 times this past week alone, Israel's offered ceasefire agreement, and Gaza has responded by launching rockets. My Red Alert app has gone off. Still, the app that I have on my iPhone, still going off nonstop. Kids are still being used as shelter and protection. They're still doing what they do in Hamas. The Palestinian government leaders, whatever you want to call them, keep saying, Hamas is not really part of the government. We condemn it, but they're not doing anything to stop it. If they were doing something to stop it, they'd work with the Israelis. Hey, we don't want them here either. They're killing people. We don't want that in our country. We don't want that in our people. We want to find a democratic way to live peacefully because that's what we want. And they're not doing that. So, the body count goes up more and more as a result of Hamas's actions. And, I'm getting sick and tired of this country. People in this country are blaming the Israelis for all of this. It's disgusting to me how many people I see that could even look at the Israelis and fault them. And that's why I praise Bibi Netanyahu, and I know I've done it in the past, but he's still sticking to his guns. No, until the threat is gone, this could be a prolonged war. This isn't going to end real quick. They've taken out tunnels upon sophisticated tunnels, some with rail systems in it, etc. I'm glad to this point that Iran really hasn't stuck their nose in, even though I know that's where the rockets come from. Mm-hmm. But as far as them they haven't said much on this whole thing, which I think they're probably just glad that Israel's not focused on them directly. But it's getting deeper and deeper. The UN Security Resolution voted. Who cares? They say nothing. They do nothing. They mean nothing. All they do is slam the Israelis and play Palestine out as these peaceful, as a peaceful government, and Hamas is, just an offshoot. You have apologists like Nancy Pelosi in our own government who comes out and essentially says that the Qataris keep saying over and over again, almost implicating that she believes that Hamas is a humanitarian organization.
Yeah.
That wasn't a direct quote. That was a direct quote. The almost implicating is my add-in. I don't want anyone to say that I'm saying that she said directly that Hamas is a humanitarian organization, but she inferred it.
So I like how Israel is kind of like, world, you can go ahead and screw yourselves because we're still taking care of business. I think Israel has shown more restraint. They have actually fought this war, and their military has been more restrained. I would agree with the statement that they've been probably the most restrained force engaged in conflict in the history of the world.
I know.
I mean, honestly, with the calls they're making, I mean, you've lost Palestinian civilians, and that's sad.
It's a tragedy.
But when Hamas is using them as shields and to attack,
you can only get hit for so long.
Yeah,
really, you can only take it for so long. There's over 1,600 rockets that have been fired in the last 2 weeks from Hamas. And I've literally heard people have the argument, well, they have that Iron Dome, so, what are they worried about? That's not the point.
Right.
First of all, I would even...
Okay, you know what? I'm going to give those people that have that argument, I'm going to give you a gun, and then I'm going to shoot at you.
And say, well, you have a gun.
And say, well, you have a gun. Or better yet, I'm going to give you a ballistic vest.
Right.
And then I'm going to shoot at you.
Yeah. Well, you have a vest, you're fine.
Right. Yeah, you're fine. What's the big deal?
Ridiculous argument. And there's some history out there, folks, that we seem to forget conveniently. Within 6 months of Israel being a formed nation again in the 40s, they were attacked by 3 different countries and have been for years, nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time they got into it this deep with Hamas, it was because Hamas was sending in suicide bombers into Israel left and right. And they know it's going to continue until Hamas is eradicated or afraid, whichever one happens first.
Yes.
And I think...
And even if they're afraid, they might continue to push on because it's their belief that is their duty.
It's belief that the Israelis, it's part of their charter, that the Israelis will be wiped off the face of the planet.
Yep, so even if they have that...
no breath in their lungs.
Even if they have that fear...
They may keep going.
Yeah.
And listen, Netanyahu is doing what a real leader does. He protects his people first. And he's been... giving the finger again to the UN and other nations, saying, hey, yeah, that's all well. You can pass whatever you want. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
My people come first. I don't answer to you, to the UN, unlike this country, who we have leaders that believe that we do. You don't protect my people. I do. So unless I see a bunch of blue helmets marching into Gaza to get rid of them, and blue helmets and guns, not blue helmets and care packages, then I'm going to keep going. And I'm not going to stop. And I know he doesn't care what the people think outside of Israel, including our own country. So I applaud him. I applaud the people of Israel.
And look, Hamas launches these rockets from crowded residential areas.
Nonstop. Nonstop.
So whose fault is that?
Yes. And,
I know what the left would say.
We talked last week about what Israel does before they bomb something, and the amazing steps they go through to try to protect human life.
Phone calls, leaflets.
The knock bombs, the little bombs that they drop on the roof that essentially says in the next few minutes, this isn't going to be here anymore. You may want to go somewhere else. And then to turn around and offer ceasefires, say, all right, well, let's come to some agreement. Let's sit down and talk, and have it essentially thrown back in their face.
Yep.
They have gone above and beyond, in my opinion. And I think if anyone looks at the totality of if you're a rational person and you look at the totality of this situation, you cannot say that Israel is the aggressor. Israel is the defender. But sometimes when you defend, you have to go on the offense. You can't just sit there. You can't just sit there and keep defending until
So I liken it to a bully.
Yes.
Right? A bully comes up and punches you in the face. And then you proceed to kick the crap out of the bully.
Yes.
Who's at fault?
It's the bully's fault.
The bully's fault.
Absolutely is. And we're in this country, and there's been celebrities. It's amazing to me, and this is what scares me in this country, the amount of influence with things like Twitter, and we use Twitter and Facebook, and I'm not saying that it's all a bad thing, but the amount of celebrities in this country who young people follow and revere in other countries, celebrities in general, who are supporting, and listen, I'm not saying they can't support it, but I just think they're fools because they're tweeting stuff. There's a kid from One Direction, a British group, that they have millions upon millions of Twitter followers, and he's talking about, save Hamas and all this other stuff, and it's influencing people without even offering any sort of education. And it's very reckless, and it's very, very damaging. And then you have some people over here who are, basketball people and a couple other celebrities, I think Rihanna or something like that. And it goes to show you how ignorant even famous people can be.
Mm-hmm.
And that just because somebody's famous doesn't mean that they're educated. Look at Snooki. And we talked about Snooki in the chat room earlier. But, we have to – this comes back to the moral decay in our country and teaching our kids, and a lot of it does. You have to teach your kids the facts behind things and educate other people, because until you do, they absolutely are going to be misled by morons. Do I wish that this didn't have to happen? Of course I do. And I know you do, and I know that I 100% believe that the Israelis wish that this didn't have to happen. is this a necessary evil, if you will? And I don't want to use that term to suggest that Israel is evil, because I think the exact opposite. Yes, I believe this is a necessary.
So you're talking
evil.
about the war itself
Yes.
as the evil, not the nation. I get that.
Right.
And anybody listening to the show, I think, understands that.
Right. This war is a necessary evil for Israel. If you think you could sit here and tell me that every Israeli soldier wants to go in there and kill anybody, you're out of your mind. I don't believe that any of them. As a matter of fact, Israel, unlike Gaza, Palestine, Iran, and some of the other Muslim areas or countries or nations, Israel has a multitude of different races and religions that are in their military that are fighting in this conflict, up to and including Muslims. So you want to talk about a state that should be revered, a state that should be modeled, a group of people that should be
Protected.
praised and protected, but praised for the way that they run their country. Israel runs their country amazingly. I don't agree with everything down to it, but that's their own country and they have the right to do that. But Israel is one of those places that I know people have gone over there and said, if you move there from America, the freedoms aren't all that different because of what they believe. And you could do, it's not like Muslim nations where if you're not a Muslim, you can't do X, Y, and Z. You could do anything you want to do. The Israelis are very caring people, and they don't want to be in this conflict. They want to go on with their everyday lives. And unlike America, where all of our wars take off and they're in other parts of the country and the average citizens don't see this, this is 75 miles from their major cities. They can see it's right there on their doorstep. They don't want it, but they need it. They have to do it to survive.
And you just hit it right there. Look, the UN, I hate the UN anyway.
So bad.
I hate the UN.
I hate the UN.
I think that we should pull out of the UN and stop funding it. I think the UN is a complete joke.
Valerie Jarrett's going to be sending them bailouts soon.
If we stopped, if we stopped funding the UN, do you think it would collapse?
Oh no.
You don't think so? Would we have blue helmets occupying Washington?
Yes.
And then we'd destroy them?
Yes. Well,
Perfect.
it depends on who calls them. But yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I think Israel's doing the right thing in obviously in keeping up with these attacks and not really paying attention to the UN. I don't think they should pay attention to the UN. Quite frankly, I don't think they should pay attention to the Obama administration either.
No.
John Kerry and Obama are two very radical people, and they are not friends of Israel.
Not at all.
They're really not. And Obama tries to kind of walk this line because I think he feels he has to. He's not doing a very good job of it. But I support Israel. And unfortunately, we have civilians. They have civilians getting killed over there, some Palestinians, and that's unfortunate. It is. But you know what? Hamas needs to stop maybe using them as shields. And I think perhaps the blame needs to
go on those murderous fiends.
Go on the appropriate people, and people need to stand behind Israel. They have a right to exist, folks. Whether you agree with how they live or agree with them or believe they're the great Satan or the second great Satan or whatever it is.
Evil Zionists, whatever you think.
They,
but at the end of the day,
they have a right to exist just like we do.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, they look, there have been other cultures that have tried to wipe other cultures off the face of the earth, and it's always spoken out against, but for some reason when it's countries that want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, it's okay. And that's unacceptable.
And careful of the sleeping giant you wake.
Yeah, what if you are the culture that they want to wipe away one day? What if you're next? Because folks, guess what? America's the great Satan.
All over the world. Over the world.
When Israel's gone, guess who they want next?
Yeah, we're next.
Yeah.
Freedom and liberty, which is a thing that Israel has in its country, is not readily welcome by people in other parts of this world. And it's actually attacked. So that's something that we absolutely have to watch out against. And again, we here on this show, we support Israel and her people and her military. And listen, wars sometimes, right, whether you like war or don't like war, sometimes they're a necessary part of life.
I don't know if anybody likes war.
You know what I mean, though.
Right. Whether you agree
there are people who like to watch it on TV and get excited for it and stuff. But what I'm saying, it's a necessary part of life. And it's something that, there's only been like 400 years as far back as we're keeping records that the world has been at quote-unquote peace. And that's as far back as we keep records. So,
Except for the Bible.
Except for the Bible.
The Bible's an old record.
Until countries stop attacking Israel, Israel will stop defending itself. It's that simple. So we're up against a break. You, my friend, have to catch a flight.
I do, again.
And,
it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Safe travels.
Thank
pleasure.
you, sir.
I will be back on the other side of the break. I talk a little bit about Russia and the Ukraine and get into that. And talk a little bit about the border as well. We're going to be back here in 3 on the Sack Kids Radio Show.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Radio.
Welcome back here to the Sackheads Radio Show on the 30th of July, 2014. This is Sackhead Sean. Sackhead Sacco might actually be allowed. I'm going to move the mic closer to his cage, which I think will just to enlighten the audience a little bit. Thank you for Clint to join us this evening. He does have to fly out. So I want to talk a little bit about the Ukraine. And, there's the incident that happened last week, or a week and a half now, I guess, where the 2 weeks. Thank you. Where the Malaysian airline flight was blown out of the sky. We already know it was done with Russian weapons. It was done possibly, most likely, by a Russian operator. There's been evidence of Russia firing into the Ukraine from their side of the border with their weapons. We all know Russia's behind what's going on in the Ukraine. We all know Russia had a hand in the plane coming down. Russia is more than a geopolitical threat, in my opinion. Why the international community isn't angered by Russia firing into a sovereign nation and getting involved?
They expect it.
Exactly. They expect it because he's a bully.
If it was North Korea, I'd feel a little different, but because it's Russia, I'm like, that's Putin right now. Yeah,
Right.
It's expected behavior.
So, and the president came out earlier in the week, and, he put more sanctions down, some of the hardest sanctions that have been put out since the Cold War. And Russia essentially said that it's going to backfire grossly because it's going to lead to energy price hikes in Europe after Brussels and Washington unveiled the punitive measures against Moscow. So he's already threatening a response via, he's holding them hostage, essentially. Hey, we control your energy. There's a ton of gas that comes from Russia that goes into Europe. And Russia controls that. And he essentially says, yeah, we're just going to jack up your prices.
Well, then Europe stops buying from them, and then what happens to their economy?
Right. But you have to fill that void. And we talked about this about a month and a half, no longer now. I mean, we've been talking about Russia on this show and Putin rebuilding
the
Soviet Union for 2 years now. And what a dangerous person he is, and how an unchecked Putin could lead us to another Cold War, a legit Cold War. There's also been issues with them not living up to the agreement about downsizing missiles, all that stuff. So it's Putin 101. He isn't going to do anything he doesn't want to do. He's going to do what he can to disrupt the countries around him. There's a reason why he's involved in the Ukraine. There's a reason why he's trying to cause unrest in other nations as well. We saw this with Georgia a couple years ago. He's going to keep inching out and taking as much of it as he can because he wants their resources. In Ukraine's case, he wanted that warm water port as well as their gas for strategic purposes, which scares me. I think a lot of people have overlooked that. They just look at it like he tried to take back Crimea. But one of the biggest things that he got when he got Crimea back is one of the only warm water bases he has that is close to Russia. They have a couple of cold water bases that can freeze over. They do have the base in Cyprus in the Middle East. But anything close to Russia, that used to be their base when Ukraine was part of the USSR. And he knows he needs that for strategic purposes. So I think that's an often overlooked issue with what's going on in the Ukraine. Yes, he's trying to say that there are people that are ethnic Russians that want to be part of Russia again, et cetera, et cetera. We all know that when the militants...
Why don't they just move to Russia? I don't get it.
I know, right? Just
so
go the other way.
Part of Russia, then just go across the border.
Literally
right
go 100 miles that way and you're in Russia and you can live there. The economy's about the same.
Yeah, it's a load of crap.
Of course it is. We all know the soldiers that were put on the ground were Russian special forces without their patches. Everything on them were Russia. One of the things that did get missed this week is part of some of the sanctions that Obama put in effect was against certain businesses. One of them was Kalashnikov, which makes the AK-47. And there are some people in this country that's saying that that's almost like an executive order against the Second Amendment because now you can't get parts for Kalashnikov, which is a big deal.
It's not a U.S.
It's not a. I mean, you'll have
business, right?
Right. It's a Russian business, and there are U.S. companies that replicate it, but a lot of people want to buy original
Authentic.
parts.
I just said
authentic. Yeah. So that has been slipped in. Overall, yes. Am I glad the president did sanctions? Yes. Is it enough? No. Putin needs to understand that the world is not going to bow to him. I said this before. As soon as that plane was shot down, once they confirmed there was an American on it, and we talked last week that the Aussies have gone after and said essentially that they are pissed and they wanted to go over and clean house on Russia because there was a lot of Aussies on the plane. But I said that as soon as we found out there was a citizen on that plane, we should have surrounded that plane, showed up and surrounded it, get Ukraine's permission, it's their country, and showed up and surrounded it with 3,000 U.S. Marines. And said, we're not here to fight your war.
Do we have 3,000 U.S.
Yes.
Marines? We do.
Oh, not 3. He hasn't downsized them yet.
2,000. We have 3. I'm impressed. Okay.
And say, we're not here to fight your war. We're not here to fight against Ukrainians, and we're not. We're here to protect the integrity of this crash until we can get investigators in here to do what they need to do.
Well, let's say you get investigators over there. What happens then? What does that matter to us?
Well, it's simple. they use their investigative technology. They will be able to find parts of the missile implanted in the plane. They will be able to track where that missile came from.
And then what?
And then start to prove the case that it was a Russian missile.
And then Russia says, "Oh, somebody stole our missile." Then what?
No, and that's the thing is they have video of the missiles coming into the country from Russia, and they have a video of. We talked about this last week.
Video of the
missile systems, the Buk missile systems, being brought across the border from Russia to the Ukraine, because they've been using it to shoot down what they believe are Ukrainian Air Force craft. 2 Su-27s, I think Sukhoi 27s was shot down last week. There's been a couple transport planes shot down. So they've been actively using it. And as we said last week, the thing about that Buk missile system is the Russian training book says it takes 2 years to learn it. Well, the Ukrainian quote-unquote freedom fighters haven't been fighting for 2 years, so there's no way Russia could have trained them to use what they claimed was a seized Ukrainian Buk missile system in 6-8 months. It's just impossible. The numbers don't add up. So after the attack, there's a picture of a Buk missile system under its heart being driven away on a flatbed truck with 2 of its missiles missing off the back of it. The day after the attack, before the Sukhois were shot down. So that missile system did activate 2 separate missiles.
Okay.
So you will be able to start proving Russia's involvement.
And then what? Let's say Russia.
I believe it's an act of war.
Do you think we're going to go to war?
I believe it's an act of war. I didn't say we should go to war.
I mean, no, what I'm saying is, do you think, hypothetically, that Obama would enact war?
No, what he would do, and I'm not talking about what he would do
sanctions.
because he's not going to do anything.
That's what I'm getting to. But even if he did, how many more?
I
have
know.
the troops.
So
to
what
even
would be
fight
our
a war?
response?
Let me ask you that.
But you may not. It may not be us. You may see other nations take the lead. Other nations are pissed. Other nations are really pissed about this, and they have a right to be. There was a lot of people.
Yeah, but getting upset does nothing.
Right. Action is what is going to take it.
Exactly.
You can do sanctions all you want, but you know what? Maybe you find out what base that Buk missile system was from, and you level it as a warning. Hey, you know what? That's what was used to attack a civilian aircraft. It had our citizens on it, not necessarily ours, if whatever country. We're going to go in and level that. And you level that base, say, don't do it again. And you send a message that this man understands, because Putin does not understand sanctions. He doesn't care.
No, he understands. He doesn't care.
Right. It'll never affect him. They're affecting the economy of Russia. That's going to affect the people. But you know what? He's winning the people over. He's got a very anti-Europe, anti-West movement going on in the country right now. He's starting to rally the people around him, and eventually, he can drop that iron fist. We've said before, and we'll say it again. I think he's trying to go back to a style of communism like China has, where they control everything, but they make their people believe there's a free market and stuff like that, and give them enough to keep them happy. Versus what used to happen in Russia with the bread lines and everything. This is something where, listen, our president is not going to take the lead, and it's just never going to happen.
We have to wait till 2016 for something.
No, what we need, you know what we need? We need somebody like Australia. We need somebody like England. We need somebody to show, and politically, hear me out, because it'd be nice for us to take the lead on this. I'm not advocating us going to war. I just don't like the idea any more than anyone else does. But I think in stuff like this, people look to us to take the lead. It's not going to happen with this guy. So what needs to happen is another nation needs to show up this president and say, hey, you know what? You don't have the balls to take Putin out. Not take him out, but prove a point. We're going to do it. And there's some nations out there that could possibly do it. Eggs in the chat room and Kel's in the chat room, and they're right. Is that the president worries more about attacking conservatives in this country through politics than he does about these madmen that are running countries. Putin's a madman. Everybody knows it. And somebody else is going to have to go ahead and kind of step up and lead that charge, because we're not going to do it. But I also don't, as much as I want us to be the leader that we once were, I don't think this is something that we can wait to be that leader on. I think it's something that we need to put, somebody needs to put Putin in his place now, because if he's not legitimately, and look what happened after he invaded Georgia. Nothing. They left troops in, they gained some ground. The international community wagged their finger. We wagged our finger. And here we are again, with Putin again doing it. And now much like Korean Air Flight 007, a Russian attacked a civilian airliner. And I know they're going to say they didn't know a civilian. Eventually, it's going to go back to them. They're going to deny it for a while, and then we're going to say, oh, there was a rogue person that was helping that shouldn't have been helping. They didn't know it was a civilian aircraft, blah, 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 blah. They knew it was a civilian aircraft by the height it's flying at, the size it's flying at, the thermal readout, et cetera, et cetera. So, Egg's got a good point in the chat room that this is Canada's chance to take the lead. Putin just scored 6 goals in a hockey game not too long ago. I don't even know if I'd go at him with hockey. And have you ever seen them drink, Egg? I don't know. But yeah, I would love to see Canada take the lead. I would love to see Britain take the lead. I would love to see any one of the countries take the lead. Israel's busy. Aussies could take the lead on this. There's a lot of countries, and there's a lot of countries over there who would absolutely benefit by a weak Putin, and a Putin who his own people are starting to call out against. But right now, he's looking more and more like a leader. And listen, he's got those people convinced that Ukraine is part of theirs. And even if he gets implicated in this and they prove it, his own people, for the most part, will support him because he's going to say it was done to achieve freedom, quote unquote, for the ethnic Russians in the Ukraine. So you need to always, you can't trust anything. He's a scumbag. You can't trust anything coming out of this guy's mouth. He's going to spin it however he can. He will understand power. And that's all he understands. He's a former KGB lieutenant colonel. He was a communist for years. I mean, he still is a communist, but he was part of the Communist Party. He was a leader in the Communist Party. He is ingrained in the Communist Party. He is ingrained in control over the people. He lived it. He ran it. He knows it.
I mean, let's think about this. I mean, you say that Putin, obviously it's true somewhat, where the people believe in him, and he's setting this propaganda, so to speak, where
he's got him
Europe's horrible and the West is horrible, and so on.
They're all trying to get us.
But if you think about it, there's so many immigrants that have come from Russia to the U.S. and they have families back and forth. They communicate, I'm sure, quite often back and forth, saying, "Hey, this is what's going on. This was not going on." I have a roommate that's has a cousin that lives in Israel,
mm-hmm.
and he shows me live footage here and there about stuff that's going on, and it's different from what the media says.
Oh, of course it is.
I mean, you get the gist of it from the media, but you get more details from people that are actually there without the crap that's twisted. So, do you think that he really does have... I mean, because Russia is big. There's a lot of people that live there. But I believe there's also a huge Russian population that lives in the U.S.,
mm-hmm.
and their families still communicate with people in Russia. So,
mm-hmm.
based on that, do you think that Putin actually has a big following?
Yes.
Or is it...
yes, he does. People in Russia love Putin because he stands up to the West. Listen, we're still the great Satan to them. You have the older population who forget, quite honestly, it's always, my time was better. They forget the hardships of communism. If they were in power during communism, yeah, they were in power, so they weren't sitting in the breadlines. The younger people have been taught that was when Russia was the strongest and people dared not to. And they've turned Putin into a hero, and they've turned Gorbachev, who dismantled the Soviet Union, into a villain in their own country. Talking about how much he destroyed and how he absolutely destroyed the strength of the Soviet Union and Russia in general. So he's got him hoodwinked. I mean, he absolutely does. And, he would go back to that form to communism and have that control in a second. I believe the downing of MH17, I believe, is one of the biggest points in modern history as far as dealing with Russia and avoiding a Cold War that's being overlooked. I think the attack on Ukraine is being overlooked as far as Russia coming back to strength or trying to show its strength. You look at the fact that Putin's slated so much money to go back into his military and build up his military strength as far as Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. He's putting all bunch more money that's been put into the Russian military than before the Cold War ended, and that's all they put their money into. So he's building up. He is absolutely tightening his grip on believe me, people that aren't his followers, they're bug tapped. I mean, it's been identified. He has a plan, and it's in motion. And anyone who thinks that that's not the case is an idiot. And you know, the reset button in this country didn't work with him. Putin, Biden can say whatever he wants. He's not afraid of us. Obama can say what he wants. He's not afraid of us. Sanctions aren't going to hurt him. Sanctions are going to hurt the regular people.
Yeah, clearly he doesn't care.
So a country needs to be a leader and go in and prove a point militarily. And just say, you down another civilian airliner, you allow this to happen. You don't call for the Russian ceasefire because you keep talking about how you're so sad about what's going on in the Ukraine, but yet you've yet to call for a ceasefire. You've yet to call for a ceasefire when the plane was down for the investigators to get in. You've yet to ask these rebels to allow the investigators to get in. The investigators have been turned away 3 times, and now there are reports, ladies and gentlemen, in the last 24 hours, that the rebels are starting to mine the area around the large parts of the aircraft to protect it. That is modus operandi, in my opinion. They're protecting the evidence.
They just blow it up at this point. If it's, what's the point of keeping it around?
I think they're doing it to draw people in to kill them. I think they're hoping that the Ukrainian workers will get in there, start the investigation, and kill them. They're using it as a tool, as a weapon, versus just blowing up the evidence. They're getting twofold out of it. And who said it's not wired to blow already? You know what I mean? If they're planting mines, anything's possible. But you need to understand, and we need to understand, that the Putin that we're dealing with is 100% communist. He hates the West. He hates Europe. If they weren't buying gas from him, he'd have no use for it. And believes in a strong, unified Russia. A strong, unified Soviet Union. I'll even say that. He's trying to get the band back together, like Ag says in chat. And I couldn't agree with him more. He is. So a big issue. And again, if I was Mitt Romney and I was running this year, I wouldn't come out and say anything else. But yeah, I was right. About Putin, about a lot of things. I was right. You didn't listen. I was right. And that's not that I want Mitt Romney to get reelected, but he was right. He called this. Everybody called this. We've been calling it for years. And it's something that has ignored. We have to stop treating Putin like he is, you know, one of the things that I think it was Biden said when the Ukraine invasion first happened was, this isn't how a 21st century leader acts. And, you know, he's acting like a dictator out of the 18th century. Yeah, because he knows you don't know how to respond to him. He's changing the tactics. He's not using policies and sanctions and all this other stuff. He's using might, which he knows everyone's afraid to use now because it looks bad for your politics. It is bad for your politics.
Yeah.
So, I'm telling you, it's horrible for the politics.
What's the right thing to do? That's, you know.
Right, but most people, when you say, especially we're a war-weary nation, people are tired in this country of war. And if somebody were to say, we're going to go send planes to go blow up the base that Buk missile system came from, or when Russia started early, you know, we're going to go send American forces in or a coalition force in to protect the Ukraine. They know people in this country would go crazy. People got mad because we put 150 airborne soldiers in Latvia or Estonia a couple months ago, which tells you that they know what Putin's doing because they're going to one of the next countries they fear he's going to invade. And they're setting up base of operation. We need to put the missile system that was in Poland back. We need to ratchet it up so much on Putin that he knows he cannot win. On top of economic sanctions. That needs to be done as well. Here's a little hint to the president and any other world leader out there if you're paying attention. See what President Reagan did that caused the end of the Cold War? And duplicate that now before it gets out of hand. Don't worry about
too late.
Don't worry about politics.
It's too late.
Don't worry about how people will view you. History will look kindly upon you if you take care of this now, because we all know what's going to happen. and we all know where it's going. We've seen it before. We saw it for almost 35 years. You need to understand that he will go until he has a reason to stop. And that's sad. Couple other, and we'll see what's happened. I have no faith in our president to do anything other than sign sanctions. So it'd be interesting to see if any other nation actually comes out and steps up. And yes, Cal, if that means that the Canadian Air Force, has to step in and help out, I would love to see that.
Well, I'd like to see the other side of the world actually
do something.
Not wait on us to do something.
Then I agree with you.
Granted, I think we should be doing something,
Mhm.
and keep in mind that we can't appease everyone in our country, and we're gonna make a mistake. But in the end, our goal is to help out,
Mhm.
and if our intentions are to help out, then typically it's for the greater good. One way or another, someone's gonna get upset. They're gonna get the panties in a bunch. No big deal.
No offense, Cal.
But
yeah,
I
no,
don't know.
somebody's always going to be angry, but you have to do what the right thing is to do.
Right.
So, speaking of international news,
Don't look at me.
on the 29th of July, a top-ranking, and this is from the UK Telegraph, top-ranking North Korea military official has threatened a nuclear strike on the White House and Pentagon after accusing Russia of raising military tensions in the Korean Peninsula. The threat came from Hwang Pong-so, director of military's General Political Bureau, during a speech to a large military rally in Pyongyang Sunday on the anniversary of the armistice that ended the 1950 to 1953 war. Hwang, who holds the rank of vice marshal, can I be about vice marshal? I'd love that. In the Korean People's Army, North Korea, said that the series of South Korea military drills, one of which included deployment of a nuclear-powered U.S. aircraft carrier, had ramped up tensions. If the U.S. imperialists threaten our sovereignty and survival, our troops will fire our nuclear-armed rockets at the White House. Rockets. First of all, people, that's an indicator. Because if he actually knew what the hell he was talking about, he'd say missile. At the White House and the Pentagon, the sources of evil, Hwang said in a speech broadcast on Monday on state television. Once again, North Korea, with all this other stuff going on, says, look at me, look at me, look at me, pay attention to me, love me. We're still the ex-girlfriend that wants your attention, so we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we're front and center in your mind. Do I think North Korea could launch a rocket and hit us, or a missile?
Why not?
With a nuclear warhead? They don't have the technology. They don't have the technology for the missile itself, and they don't have the warhead condensed enough to fit on the front of it.
They have Google. They can Google it.
They can Google it. No, they don't have Google. It's North Korea.
I'm pretty sure there's a
It's
YouTube.
North Korea. They don't have Google.
That's right.
Do I think that this is something that needs to be addressed? Absolutely. They fired another missile last week, short term, into the North Korean Sea or the Korean Sea. They do have the ability to drop a nuclear weapon on South Korea and other allies in the region. They do have some capability. Am I afraid outright of North Korea? No. I worry a little bit about our soldiers that are in the DMZ still in South Korea. We still have a large contingent of units over there. The war is not over. It's just an armistice. The war is not ended. We're still technically at war with North Korea.
Well, let's get back past the technicality. It's not a war, right?
No, it is. We're still technically at war. It's almost like a prolonged ceasefire, but there's been no peace treaty ever signed.
Yeah, but
we're still technically at war. North Korea will say that on a regular basis. They believe they're still at war because they believe, much like Hamas believes that Israel shouldn't exist, they believe that South Korea should be under their rule. It's no different. They just don't have the stones yet, and I don't know if they ever will, to push the issue. They do a couple little things, and essentially once the world's paying attention to other little things, they have a tendency to throw it out and just to get the attention.
It's the longest war I've ever seen in my life.
It's one of the longest ones. So it's something to watch, but I think we need to send a message, and I've said it time and again, the next time they put a rocket up, we need to blow it down. Hey, listen, we're out of time here on the Sackheads Radio Show. Thank you, everyone who joined us this evening. Thank you to our friends in the chat room.
Thanks for letting me on
Ken,
stage.
Egg, Kel, and everyone else that joined in from here and there. We love you all, and we thank you so much for following us. Check us out tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time for the Evan Miller Report here on shrmedia.com. Go to shrmedia.com, please, and check out all of our articles and writers. Rosie Dale should be putting up an article sometime this week, so we're looking forward to that. We will be back next Wednesday here, Sack Kids Radio Show at 8 p.m. You don't want to miss it. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. is the Exceptional Conservative Show here on shrmedia.com. Good night. Thank you so much, and God bless. Sacco.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sack Kids Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best late-night conservative talk, Sack Kids Radio.
Sack News. Sack News. Radio. Sack News. Sack News. Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.